grew up in the South Wales valleys in the 1960s. Playing on mountains, playing in the park and, in a small village. It was just a great adventure. I went to secondary school. I always thought, what job could you get where you had 4 hours of sport playing rugby, and I enjoyed doing art. They were my favourite subjects. I became interested in photography after finishing school. First time I processed a black and white film, it was like just a changing moment in my life. I just loved seeing the negatives and then making prints. And I used to borrow my brother's Pentax K1000 camera, and I used to love just going out and taking photographs. Over the 30-odd years as a photographer and as a documentary photographer, I've worked on many assignments and commissions. My favourites are probably the South Wales valleys, which I've photographed over 3 or 4 decades now, so I always loved photographing in the South Wales valleys. But the one that really stands out is when I visited the Appalachian Mountains in Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee and Virginia. And I just absolutely loved going to a totally different place, but with things in common to the place I came from. In other words, coal mining was starting to disappear, and some of the places out in the wilds up in the mountains there had nothing but coal, and the communities were basically being left behind, and it was like going into the 1950s. During the past year, I've been commissioned to photograph the industrial manufacturing coastscape of Wales. And so I've been travelling around, and the interesting thing about this project, and it's my first project which I've photographed at night. All of the photographs were taken at night, and I used spot lamps as well to highlight areas that I felt were important as a feature for the image. The reason I photographed at night was really a slightly different direction for me to go in, and to do landscape photography as well, so there aren't any people in the photographs. We know how beautiful the Welsh coastline is. I'm more interested in industry and the manufactured coastline and the way that man has made his mark really on the coastline. So you've got the natural beauty juxtaposed against the man-made things like industrial buildings, docks, and things like tourism, caravan sites and things like that. So that's the things that I'm interested in photographing. Coming from a documentary photography background, and also I started as an industrial photographer, probably that's why I have such an interest in industry. I'm not trying to be negative, but what I'm trying to say is, and what I'm trying to show, is that the coastline has changed from the days of coal mining where the docks were absolutely bustling with coal coming down from the valleys and being shipped out and exported all over the world, and pit props being brought in. To showing the way that places like the docks now survive from importing and exporting all different types of goods and using ferry services, etc., to make the docks pay.
My name is Kerry Thompson, and I'm the curator at Big Pit. I started work, it was 1969 in the autumn, left school. Actually, the headmaster actually advised me to join the National Coal Board because didn't see much point in me stopping on. So I started work in Cwm Colliery, and I worked there until 1986. after the strike. I stayed on the coalface all my mining career, and went through quite a lot of stuff. I think the first year I was there we were on strike. That was for the surface men in 1970, and then we went through the 1972 strike, 1974 strike, 1983 strike for Lewis Merthyr, and then of course the biggie 1984-85. Cwm Colliery was one of the biggest collieries in Wales. It was known as the flagship colliery. It employed about 800 men as Cwm Colliery alone, but as a joint enterprise with Coedini Colliery there was over 1,000 men working there, which is a big chunk of workforce. And when you think of it today, if somebody said they were bringing into South Wales 1,000 jobs, I think everybody would be breaking open the champagne bottles, you know. But it closed in 1986, and like a lot of other people, we were wondering exactly what we were going to do when it finished. Some people had some sort of skills, so I didn't have at the time, and they became welders, car mechanics. They moved out to the country, they moved out of Wales, you know, they did lots of things, and some of them people just basically retired.
I'm at Milford Haven, and I've just been photographing on the quayside there, and photographing across to the oil refineries, which are on the other side of the bay. So when I was taking the photographs, which seemed to be quite interesting, I was talking to a gentleman who said that there was a thing called a mining depot where in the Second World War they used to place the mines that went into the sea onto the ships, and they were stored at this depot. It's disused now. It just looked like an old disused factory. Luckily, I could get through to photograph it, but I didn't particularly think that the lighting conditions were good, so I came back to the quayside to take some pictures. But I'm certainly going to go back to the mining depot. I did take some pictures of it, but like I say, it's something that I'd like to re-photograph.
I was born in 1955, so I've got quite a good memory of all the changes in Swansea from the 60s, I suppose, on. 50s is a bit vague, obviously, you know, when you're young, but it was a very, very dirty place to grow up. There were so many works in the valley, and also down with the docks and Spontex, the sponge factory, right on the beach. There was coal lorries back and forth. So there was lots and lots of dust in the air, and I can remember my mother doing the washing some days, putting the washing out and literally having to get it in an hour later and rewash it because the wind was in the wrong direction or something like that, and it would just get covered in soot or dust or whatever. There were so many works in the valley. Copper industry had been going on in Swansea since, you know, 1700s. A lot of smelting going on. They brought the copper ore to Swansea from all over the world because we had the coal nearby, and it could take as much as, you know, maybe 10 tons of coal to make 1 ton of copper, because the Swansea method, they kept reheating it and re-rolling it until it was just right. So the works took up a lot of the valley. And as a child, I can remember going up there, and it was like playing on the moon or playing on Mars, because the rocks were brightly coloured, bright orange in places, yellow in other places. So we used to play in the river as well, and we used to go swimming in the river, and you can imagine the pollution in the river, because it used to run straight out of the works, straight into the river. So of course, when I was sort of growing up around here, this was known as the South Dock, And over that side then was the fish market, and all the trawlers used to tie up over there. Down the far end was Gregor's wood yard, and you'd often see planks and things floating away which had dropped in the water, and they'd just be drifting around. I think the Welsh coastline has really changed dramatically in places. Obviously, where there was nothing before, just nice scenery, that's obviously stayed the same. But where there was industry, you've got marinas springing up. You know, it's ideal. Obviously, you've got a huge dock. Once the industry goes, it's quite barren, it's quite bare. The dock out here was filled in twice and dug out again because, you know, they were going to actually build something on it before it was realised how sort of lucrative turning it into a marina could be. A marina is great. It brings in lots of, obviously the shipping that comes in, it's obviously good for the area. The housing that goes with it, it's brilliant. It brings in tourism, it brings in new people who are moving to the area to work. And it really sort of brightens the whole place up, if you like. You know, it generates good sort of money and things for the area and good opportunities.
I'm at Port Talbot Steelworks today on a beach which I believe is called Margan Beach. It's taken a bit of walk to get here, but it seems to be well worth it. The sun is just going down now. It's about 4:30 or something like that, so we should start to get dusk pretty soon, the next hour, 2 hours or so. It's quite interesting because you've got the beautiful coastline, the sea and the waves are quite dramatic today. And you've got this massive steel plant, which is incredible, really. I believe it's owned by a company called Tata now. It used to be owned many years ago by British Steel and subsequently Chorus. But it's pumping out quite a lot of smoke, and it's going about its business. It's really large in scale, which is typical, really, of South Wales, because the industry used to be based a lot around South Wales. What I'm going to try and do tonight is to show the industry there and to use long exposure as I've been doing during this project, but also to show some of the beach and the location of it, which should be quite interesting. The only problem with that is that when you're photographing something like this, the sea is that side and the industry is that side, so you really have to choose on either photographing towards the sea or photographing directly the other direction and photographing the steelworks. So we'll have a look once I start looking through the camera and deciding what composition is going to be good. Then I can sort of make decisions about what to photograph. Photography is great, so it's always a challenge, and however long you've been doing it, and I've been doing it 30 odd years, it's always something that you can never master, and I think you have to really think about creating strong images.
I've lived in Swansea all my life. I did move away for a little while when I was studying, but being a Swansea girl and a Swansea Jack, I came back to Swansea. I love the coastline, I love the sea, I can't get enough of the beaches. It's close to the countryside, I love the Gower. I know it sounds like a cliche, but it is absolutely true. It really is. It's got a beautiful coastline. The industry didn't affect me so much because I didn't have to work in a factory or anything like that, like my parents did. So I'm quite fortunate and glad that they worked so hard all their lives to give their children a better future, and indeed they did. Living so far up the hill in Swansea with the views that they could see over the bay and over the docks as well, they could actually hear the German bombers arriving. They could see the German pilots in the planes as well, which I just can't imagine from my generation how horrific that must have been. And they thought that when the Germans were actually firing, that they thought they were firing directly at them as children running on the streets, which must have been horrific. And those memories are really strong still in their minds and affected me quite strongly as well to talk about it. Swansea now compared to when I was younger. When I was younger it was quite busy. I just thought it was amazing. It was a city in my eyes. But having grown up and seen the reality of it all and seeing a lot more unemployment, it is saddening to see unemployment. I mean, I'm not saying there are no opportunities. There are opportunities if you want them. But I don't think a lot of people want them, sadly. I work in education and I see a lot of students who really want to change their lives for the better. Which is what we're there for, to encourage them to progress and go and do something better with their lives. But they do have to take into account that they'll have to move away from Swansea. And a lot of them are fearful of that. I'm hoping they'll change their minds and see that there's more out there, because there is a lot more out there. And I'm hoping that employment rates will change, because it is sad, you know, no jobs, no prospects. But if you train for something and you really want it badly enough, you can go and do it and you can go and get it. I don't know if Swansea will change drastically in the next few years. I really hope so. But as I say, it's all down to investment again. We need investment, we need manufacturing trade here.
I've come here to Coastline, which is on the Gower Peninsula. This was a very old salt house where they used to use it to collect the salt from the sea. I suppose this is the most boring part really, is just waiting for light. And just waiting for the light to die down enough just to get that sort of half an hour of really good light. It's quite a nice place to sit and wait, and it's not particularly cold this evening, so it's okay. I can think of worse things to do in life. just driven up to Borth, which is in Ceredigion, which is on the west side of Wales. I've just parked up on the beach just by the Dyfi estuary, which I can see across the estuary there is Aberdyfi. I've just been talking to a gentleman who owns a boatyard, and he said that I can go back and take some photographs tonight using painting with light. So that I'll just wait a few hours for the light to go down a bit, and hopefully then I can go back and get some good shots.
When I was young, I did an apprenticeship in the Merchant Navy with a firm called Ocean Fleets, Blue Funnel, and they were a really good sort of patriarchal type, organisation. They really took you under their wing and looked after you, and they taught me everything really, not just engineering, but navigation and management and everything you can imagine, because when you're at sea you need to be able to deal with things, especially as an engineer officer. You've got to be able to deal with whatever comes up. This yard was actually a sawmill, a steam-driven sawmill, which processed the wood that came from Nova Scotia. So there were barges from here that went backwards and forwards carrying the wood. There were barges going up to Furness, and the ships lay alongside the jetty at Aberdyfi.
I was born in Birkenhead, then I moved to Bethesda for a little bit, for about a year when I was about 3 years old, and then I moved to a little village called Llanlonner. It's on the east coast of Anglesey, the little tail bit by Penman Point, and I lived there from the age of 3 to 16, and then I moved to a more kind of touristy village called Bentlech, which is by Amlwch. It's a couple of miles down from Amlwch. In terms of its industrial past, Amlwch and Anglesey generally, it is Amlwch, and the copper works there really. There's, I mean, in terms of its recent history, there's the ferry, and Holyhead, there's quite a few. That was the kind of main.
So where would you recommend to go for like industrial coastline shots? Where would you say?
Well, I'd definitely go to Amlwch for the copper works, because that is just absolutely fascinating.
Gee, my old man's got a problem. He lives with a bottle, that's the way it is. He said his body's too old for working. His body's too young to look like his. Mama went off and left him. She wanted a life that he couldn't give her. Said somebody's gotta take care of him. So I quit school, that's what I did. family full of eccentrics. She's done things I never expected, but I need more time.
We're in Anglesey, aren't we, Boy? And it's a fantastic morning. The sun is rising, and it was time. It's just gone 7 o'clock, and it's the mattress is really stiff. So didn't have a particularly good night's sleep. You did, didn't you? Because you got all the room. But it's part of camping, isn't it? So hopefully get some pictures today. This is a brickworks, an old brickworks which hasn't been used for some years, can't remember the name of it, in Anglesey. And I came up here yesterday to just do a recce really, and to find the place. It's quite difficult to find, it's quite a walk. And but I was going to wait to take some photographs, but my battery pack went on the torch, on the spot lamp, so I couldn't do that. I couldn't wait for it to go dark. But luckily, after going around Bangor all day in North Wales, I managed to find a new battery to fit into the pack, which took a lot of asking around, and managed to do that, thankfully. And now I'm going to wait until it goes into twilight and darkness, and then I can start taking some photographs. I think this is the only place really in Anglesey that interests me as part of the project. So it's been photographed many, many times. I think there's quite a few photographs on the internet, but I don't think any have been photographed at night using spot lamps. So hopefully we'll get something slightly original and a new take on this particular historic building, which is a fantastic place. There's some incredible ruins left here. Bloody midges were everywhere. I've just travelled across to the North Wales coast now on the latter part of my journey around the Welsh coast, and this ship, which is called the Duke of Lancaster, which was bought by some guy who wanted to make it into a market and a bed and breakfast and a restaurant. That was about 30 years ago, and I think it's been pretty much a white elephant, and it's been not used since, so it's just decaying really. It's just left here for sightseers to have a look at. I'm going to come back. I've just done a recce and I've shot some pictures just to get some ideas, and I'm going to come back tonight. And there's a couple of things I'm interested in. There's like cracks in the mud that I could use in the foreground and get the ship in the background. And the thing I've particularly been interested in this project is just random numbers on different things like rocks. There's number 43 here, which is randomly seems to be written on a rock. There must be some reason for it. This is really the first major piece of work where I've used digital photography and digital printing. I've usually used traditional methods of black and white, darkroom printing. But I'm really quite impressed with the quality of the prints. I'm printing on archival paper, so it'll last for a good few years and the pictures won't fade. But yeah, there's some beautiful colours coming out, vivid colours, and yeah, they're looking pretty good, I think. So I'm quite happy with them. You have to put the white gloves on for archival reasons, so you don't get any kind of acids from your hands and stuff on the archival prints or the archival mounts. So it is quite important to put the gloves on to cut that down so that the prints will last for many years and they can stay in photographic archives then, and they won't fade for 100 years or so. So that's pretty good. You have to do that really for exhibitions. And what you have to do as well is the exhibition lights are quite strong, and you have to make sure that the prints are not going to fade during the exhibition. So you have to use archival printing paper to be able to do that. And digital paper has come on leaps and bounds now, so that's enabled photographers to do digital prints, which is very good. Yeah, so this is one of the pictures from a series. It's one of the first ones that I took. It's the second Severn crossing. And really what I'm trying to show there is industry begins there because, traffic comes to and fro from over the Severn Bridge to not just the coastline, but the rest of Wales as well. So industry really relies on it quite heavily, and commerce and so on. So this picture was one that I took fairly early on, like I say, in the project, and I couldn't believe how quick the tide came in. It was really pitch black here, and it was quite scary really, because you could hear the water and you couldn't actually see it, but when you shone the spotlights onto the water, it was coming in really quick. So about 5 minutes after this picture was taken, this area where I was standing was basically water. So it was good experience though. I've only really touched on the theme. I could spend five or 10 years doing this project. But when I look at the pictures now, I just think of the people that could be in the pictures. So like the industry, who were the people who work there, and I'd like to go back around the Welsh coast and photograph the people. Maybe sometime in the future, it'd be really good if I could do that.